Alright, so in this project we're going to build a password generator. So the idea is we can choose a length. We have 20 by default. Let's say we want a 10 character long password, and we can choose if we want to include uppercase letters, lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. So let's say we want just uppercase, lowercase, and numbers but not symbols. Click generate and that's what we get. So we're going to get 10. If I change this to, let's say, 5, and let's include symbols as well, now we're going to get, a password with uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers, and symbols. In addition to that, we're going to add the functionality where we can click this and it's going to copy the password to the clipboard. If I just go up here in my URL bar and paste, you'll see that it'll actually paste whatever is in the password result here. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump into it. The JavaScript in this is going to be a little more complicated than a lot of the other projects, but we'll go ahead and take it step by step and get it done. Okay, so we're going to get started on the HTML for the password generator. Now I have my project starter open and I just have a link to the font awesome CDN from cdnjs.com, and because we do need that clipboard icon. And then I'm just going to add, let's say for the title here, password generator, and then we'll go down here and let's create a container for everything to go into, and then in that container we'll have an h2 and say password generator. So under that h2, let's go ahead and have a div with the class of result dash, not generator, container. And basically this is where the actual password is going to go. So in here we're going to have a span with the class of result, and nothing's going to actually go inside the span. We just want that there. And then we want the clipboard button, so I'm going to say button class btn, class btn, and I'm also going to give this an ID of clipboard. And I'm going to use an icon here, so I tag with the class of FAR, and then let's do FA-clipboard. I'm going to save that. We get a little button with a clipboard icon. So that's it for the results container. So under that div, under the results container div, let's create another div with the class of settings. So this is where we're going to have like each setting, like the password length, if we're going to include uppercase letters, lowercase letters, and so on, and each one is going to have a class of setting. So let's create our first one here, which is going to be the password length. I'm going to use a label here, get rid of that, say password length, and this is going to be an input. It's going to be type number, and we don't need a name for this. The ID is going to be length. And then let's do a minimum. So minimum allowed will be a 4, and then max will be 20. And then let's do an initial value here of 20. So this is how long the password is going to be. So the next one is going to be a checkbox. Actually, the rest of them will be checkboxes. So under that setting, let's create another div with the class of setting. And this is also going to have a label. And this label is going to be include uppercase letters, and it's going to be an input with the type of checkbox, and we don't need a name. The ID is going to be uppercase, and then I want this checked by default, so we're going to add checked. We're going to have them all checked by default. Alright, so if I save that, you can see the checkbox. Now the rest of these, there's going to be 3 more checkboxes, so I'm going to just copy this down. That's 2. We want 4 altogether, 3, 4. And under uppercase, we're going to do lowercase. So we'll take that and that, change it to lowercase. And then, whoops, I wanted to do that to the second one. So this will be lowercase. And then after that we'll do numbers. So this and this will be numbers. And then symbols. So this and this will be symbols. All right, so we need password length, include uppercase letters, lowercase letters, include numbers, letters. That doesn't make sense. Let's get rid of the word letters. And then include symbols. Okay, and then after that we just want a button, so we want to go now outside of the settings container, which is this right here, ends here, and let's create our button. So we'll say button. I'm going to give it a class of BTN and also BTN dash large, and I'm going to give it an ID of generate, and then we'll just say generate password. Okay, so that's the HTML. So let's jump over to our style sheet, and I'm going to use the Mully font, which we've used quite a bit. So let's see, let's say CSS question mark family equals MULI, and then let's add that to our body font family. And then we're going to add a background color to the body. So background color is going to be the hexadecimal value of 3B3B98. So we'll have this blue background, and then the color of the text is going to be white. And then let's see, so we want display flex column. We'll just add padding here as well of 10 pixels. And then for the H2, I'm going to just set a margin of 10 pixels top and bottom, or so 10 pixels top, 0 left and right. Let's do 20 on the bottom, and just make sure we text align to the center. Now the container, remember that wraps around everything, so I'm going to set on the container a background color of, let's do 23235B on that, and then let's do a box shadow as well. So we'll say box shadow, and let's do for the offsets 0 pixels, 2 pixels. For the blur value 10 pixels, and RGBA I'm going to do white, so 255 for red, green, blue, and then for the alpha we'll do 0.2. So it gives it kind of a light, you see the light box shadow. And then for the padding, we'll just do 20 pixels all around, and let's set a fixed width of 350 pixels, and let's set a max width of 100%. Alright, so now we have the main container. Now the results container, which I believe goes around this right here, is a span, should be a span, and then we have our clipboard. So let's style result dash container, or did I call it result or results? Yeah, result container wraps around span result and the button. And for result container, let's set a background color of RGBA black, and let's do 0.4. And then I'm gonna display flex. So all we have is the clipboard icon, the button, and the span. So now those are in a flex row. Let's justify content to the beginning, so flex dash start, and then let's align items center, and then I'm going to position this relative, and that's because I want to position the button inside of it absolute. And then the font size, let's increase that to 18 pixels, and then we're going to set the letter spacing to 1 pixel, and the padding we'll set to 12 on the top and bottom, and 10, oops, not 20, 10 on the left and right. Okay, we'll give it a fixed height of 50 and a width of 100%. Alright, now for the, let's see, we have a span with a class of result, And actually, I want that to be an ID, not a class, because we're going to insert it from the JavaScript. We're going to insert it into there, and I'm going to grab it by the get element by ID. But I do want to just add to that. Let's say result container ID result, and I'm going to set the word wrap to break word. And then for the max width, I'm actually just going to use calc here. So we'll say calc, and we want to take 100%, and I'm going to subtract 40 pixels from that. And the reason for that is because the button is going to be 40 pixels, and we don't want the result to go behind the button. And this clipboard button is actually going to be positioned over here. Now both of these, the clipboard and this button, the generate button, both have a class of BTN. So I'm going to style that first, and then we'll style the clipboard button itself, or position it and stuff. So as far as the button goes, BTN, I'm going to set border to none. So we'll get rid of that, and then let's set the background color is going to be this right here, this 3B3 B98, and then the color is going to be white. And let's set the font size to 16 pixels, and let's set some padding. So padding will be 8 pixels top and bottom, 12 pixels left and right. And let's set the cursor to a pointer. Alright, so we styling both of these because they both have that BTN class. This one has a class of BTN large, so I'm just going to add down here BTN-large, and I just want to, instead of inline, we'll display it as a block, and let's set the width to 100% so it goes across the entire thing. Alright, now for this, for the clipboard button, that's in the result container. So what we'll do is take the result container BTN, and I'm going to make that a little bigger. Actually, let's position it first. So we'll position it absolute, and we'll position it absolute inside of the result container, which we set to position relative. When you want to position something absolute within a certain element, that container element has to be relative. And I want to set it from the top 5 pixels and from the right 5 pixels. Yeah, so we just want to change, let's make this a little bigger. So we're going to set the width and the height to 40 pixels on this. So height 40 pixels, there we go. And then let's also increase the font size to 20. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Now this stuff here, these all have a class of setting, so I want to fix how that looks. So let's go, we'll just go down to the bottom here and say setting, and I'm going to display flex, because the setting, it has what? It has the label and the input. So now each setting is a flex box, and I want to take the remaining space that is the horizontal space and set it in between the both. So we'll say space between, and that will push everything, you know, over to the side because the remaining space is now in between the two flex items. And then I just want to align, not self, I want to align items center on the horizontal on the vertical axis, and just set a margin to split them up. Let's do 15 pixels on the top and bottom, like that. Alright, so I think that looks pretty good. Yeah, that looks good. So when we generate the password, it'll show up here. And the reason I did this max width calc on the result, that is going to go in here. So we're saying the max width will be 100% of this whole thing, but minus 40 pixels because the width of the button is 40 pixels, and we don't want it to, you know, run into that. So now we have our design. We have the, you know, the look of this, but we still have to make it function. So in the next video, we're going to start on the JavaScript. All right, so we're going to get started on our JavaScript here, and I'm not going to say that this is like an advanced project, but a lot of the JavaScript we're going to do here is more in depth than some of, the majority of the projects that are in this course. So I'm going to start off by creating a few functions to generate an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter, a number, and a symbol, because we need to do that. We need to randomly generate these things to create our password, and we need to combine them. So what I'm going to do is create some functions. So this function is going to be called getRandomLower. And that's exactly what it's going to do, is return a random lowercase letter. Now, there's a few ways we can do this. What I'm going to do is use the string object, and on that there's a method called fromCharCode. Now, I'm just going to bring this window over for a second here. So this is the string object, which is used to represent and manipulate a sequence of characters. And you can convert something to a string, but there's a whole bunch of methods that you can use on this, including fromCharCode. So the static fromCharCode method returns a string created from the specified sequence of UTF-16 code units. So basically we can put a number in here which pertains to, and this is just the W3 Schools website, but you can find these in many different places. These are the ASCII printable characters, and we have our characters over here, so letters, numbers, symbols, and then they have a specific number or a specific code that pertains to them. So if we look at like the numbers here, 0, the code for that is 48, and then it just keeps going, and then 9 is 57. If we want uppercase letters, starts at 65 and ends at 90. Lowercase letters start at 97 and end at 122. So using this from character code, if I put a 97 in here, and then we'll just do a console log of get random lower, and if I go over here, we should get a lowercase a, because 97 is the code for lowercase a. The next letter B would be the code 98, so that gives me B. 122 should be a Z. All right, so what we want to do is just generate a random lowercase. So we'll take the 97, which we know is A, right, lowercase a, and to that I want to just multiply any number up to 26, because there's 26 characters in 26 letters in the alphabet. So what we can do is first of all just take math.floor, which is going to round down, and then math.random, and then I just want to multiply that by the highest random number I want to get, which is 26, and then I'm going to add to that 97. So this could be 1 plus 97, which would be 98, which would be a B, or 2 plus 97, which would be C. So let's just go ahead and save this, and you can see right away we get a V. If I reload, W, X, L, Z, M, so it's just going to be a random lowercase number. So there's other ways you can do this, but this is just the way I'm going to do the lowercase, the uppercase, and the numbers. So let's just copy this now and paste that in, and this one is going to be get random upper, and we're going to do pretty much the same thing here, except we want to change the range. We still want 26 as our random number to add on, because we're still dealing with the alphabet, but we want to change this from 97 to 65, because in that chart I showed you, uppercase A was 65. Okay, so it's going to just be something 26, between 1 and 26 plus 65. So if I go ahead and console log get random upper, we get uppercase B, we get O, S, G, so it's just going to be a random uppercase. Let's do the same for numbers. So this will be get random number, and instead of 26 we want 10, because it's going to be up to, it's going to be 0 through 9, and then we want to add on to that 48, because 0 has the code of 48. So if I go down here and I say get random number, we get 3, we get 2, 5, 8, 5, 8, 1. All right. And then for symbols, I just want to use a certain set of symbols. So let's just we'll just say function get random symbol, and I'm just going to grab this string of symbols here. So I'm going to say const symbols and set that to a string with these specific symbols in it. And then we want to get a random one of these, so we'll return symbols. And even though this is a string, we can still use an index. Like if I get 0, symbol 0, and we go down here and we say get random symbol, I'm going to get the exclamation. If I do 1, I should get the @ sign. So it's 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So I'm just going to get a random number in here that with a max of the length of the entire string. So to do that, we'll do math.floor, math.random, and let's go ahead and multiply that math.random by whatever the length of symbols is, the length of that string. So now you see I get a %. If I reload, slash, so I'm just going to get one of these symbols here. So now we have these 4 functions, and we can implement them into the rest of the application. Now one thing I do want to do before we end this specific video is up here I'm going to create a variable called random func, because I want it to be able to get a random lowercase, uppercase number, symbol, whatever. So I'm going to use this object here and give each function a key. So lower is going to be get random lower, and upper will be get random upper, and number get random number, and symbol will be get random symbol. All right, so we have this object that has these keys that equal whatever these functions return. And you'll see why in a little bit when we use these. But I think we should stop the video here, and in the next one we'll start to work with the DOM and start to add some event listeners. Want to be able to click this button, generate a password based on these functions over here. We also want to be able to have the function to copy it to the clipboard, so we'll get to that stuff in the next video. Alright, so we have these functions to generate random lowercase, uppercase numbers and symbols. Now we need to create the functionality for this UI here. So I'm going to just bring in everything we need. So first I'm going to bring in the result element, and let's use document.getElementById. We have the ID of result. So that's going to be the span that is this right here. This is where we're going to want to show the result. I'm going to copy this down a few times. So 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I think 9 is all we need. And then this is going to be the length. So let's call this length element, and we should have an ID. Yeah, so we have an ID length, we have uppercase, lowercase, and so on. We should have an ID of generate here. We should have an ID of clipboard here as well. So we want to bring all that stuff in. So we have length. Let's do uppercase. So uppercase element, and that has an ID of uppercase, and lowercase. It's lowercase element, and then let's do numbers element. And then symbols. symbols element, and then this is going to be the generate element, which is the button. Generate, and then we have our clipboard. Alright, so that's everything that we want to bring in. Now let's start off by creating an event listener. I'm going to leave this up top, this index of our functions down here, but under that let's take generate element and let's add an event listener onto that of a click, and when that happens we'll run an arrow function, and I'm going to get the length element here. I want to get that and I want to parse it as a number, so I'm going to call this length, and we want length element dot value because it's an input, so we want to get the value, and we can easily parse this to a number with just, whoops, didn't want to do that, just adding a plus sign onto it. Alright, so if I console log here, length, and we open our console and I click generate, we get 20, and it's a number. If I take that plus sign away and I generate, it's 20, but it's white. It's actually a string, so this will convert it to a number. Alright, so we want to get the length. We want to get, if these are checked, we want to know. So basically, if these two are unchecked and these are checked, we want to know because we need to know what to generate. So let's say const has lower, and we're going to set that to the lowercase element dot value, which will either be true or false. Okay, we'll do const, actually I'll just copy that down. So that's lowercase. Then we also want the uppercase. We'll call this has upper, and this one will be has number, and this is our, is it numbers? Yeah, numbers element, and then symbols element value will be has symbol, and then let's go ahead and just console log here, has lower, has upper, has number, and has symbol. So if I go ahead and generate, we get cannot read property value. No. Let's see. Oh, I put value here. So these are checkboxes. We don't want value, we want checked. So we just want to change these to checked. Alright, so click that, and we still get that error because uppercase element, did I misspell it up here? I misspelled it right here. So uppercase. Alright, so if I click generate, I get true. I get 4 trues. Now if I take away these two, if I uncheck these and I check, I get false, false, true, true. Alright, so it's going to give us either a true or false. Now we're going to set, let's get rid of the console log, but keep this, and I'm going to say the result element, set the inner text equal to, and then we're going to have a function called generate password, and it's going to take in all of this stuff, and it's also going to take in the length we want the password to be, which is this right here. Okay, so we're just creating we're going to create a function. We're going to pass in all this info, which will be the length as well as all the booleans for each of these. So let's create that function. Say function generate password, and it's going to take in, let's say, lower, upper. Make sure it reflects what we're passing into it. So lower, upper, number, and symbol, and length. Okay, so it's going to take in this stuff here, and then let's go ahead and just initialize a variable called generated password, which is going to represent the password that's generated, and it's going to be just empty by default. Then I want to get the types count. So what I mean by types is, this lower, upper, number, and symbol. So, and what is true. So let's say const not const lower, const types count, and set that to lower plus upper plus number plus symbol. Okay, and we can go ahead and console log and see what that gives us. If I do types count, submit that, we get 4. If I uncheck 2 of these, I get 2. So it's going to give me the count of, how many are selected. Now I want to actually create an array of types. So let's say const types array, and let's set that to an array, and inside here we want to wrap these in curly braces. Lower, what I want to end up with is something that looks like this. So an array with objects that have like lower true, that would be like the first one, and then we'd have upper true or false. So that's what I want this to look like. So we're gonna say lower, upper, number, and symbol. Oops, that should be a comma. Okay, and if we console log that, and I'm just console logging everything so you can see exactly what it gives us. So here we just have an array, and we have lower, true. If I uncheck those, we get lower false, upper false, and so on. However, what I want to do is, if it's false, like if these two are false, I don't even want them in this array. So this should ultimately be just 2 with the trues. So we can do that by filtering this array. So this types array equals array dot filter, and we'll say for each item we're going to use object dot values of that particular item, and we want the first item. So basically what this will do is filter out anything that has false as a value. So now if I save this and I uncheck the first 2 and I generate, now you can see I only get number and symbol because those are the only ones that are checked, instead of getting all 4 and just saying false. If I check all of these, then we get 4 that are all true. Okay, so next thing, now that we have that, let's check and see if there's no type, because if nothing is actually checked, we don't want to do anything, right? And notice this says undefined right now. That's fine for now. So I'm going to check if, and we can do this by checking the types count, which I defined above. If that types count is equal to 0, then let's just return. We'll return nothing, an empty string. So up here, if I do that, we get undefined, but if I uncheck everything and generate, we get nothing, which is fine. That's what we want, because we're not checking any of these. All right, now to actually create the password here, like all the characters, we're gonna create a for loop, and we have these functions down here. We have basically an index of them here. So lower, upper, number, symbol, and those should match these, lower, upper, number, symbol. And we're going to do a for loop here. Let's say let I equal 0, and we want to say if I is less than the length, okay, so meaning this right here, in this case it's 20 by default, and then we want to increment I, with the count, whatever the count is. So types count, so plus equals types count, which is going to be whatever we check here. So in this loop, let's take the types array, and we want to loop through that with a for each, and say for each type, let's construct, we'll say func name, and we basically want to get from this type here, because this is, let me just console log this actually. So if I console log type, let's just see what we get. So I'll generate, and we get a number. So number true, symbol true, lower true, upper. I mean, they're all going to be true, but it's number symbol lower, upper, number symbol. Okay, so I mean, it's always going to be in that order. You could randomize it, but I think it's fine. It's going to be a random number symbol lower, upper. So what we want to do with that is get the function for number symbol lower upper based on this up here. So it'll basically get, you know, what's returned from that specific function. And we can do that, let's say const func name, and if we use the object.keys method and pass in the type, we want to get the first value, so 0. And just to show you what that gives us, let's do a console log of func type. So that gives us, not func type, func name. So that gives us upper number symbol lower. Now we can take this random func object here, which has these as keys, and we want to call that. So let's say generated password, generated, not generate. Generated password is the string that is empty right now, and we want to append onto that. So plus equals, we're going to append onto it, and then take our random func object and then pass in as an index whatever the func name is, okay, which will be these here. And we want to call the function, so we want to put a parentheses there. So this is going to basically just loop through whatever the length is, and we're going to end up with a random uppercase, what's the order here? Lowercase, uppercase, number, symbol, lowercase, uppercase, number, symbol. It's going to be in that same order, but it'll be generated, and it'll be different every time you generate, and it's going to do that up until this length. Now we want to return that from this function, so we need to go outside of this whole for loop here, and then let's say const final password, and we'll set that to generated password. Make sure it's generated and not generate, because that's the name of the function. And we're going to use slice here, which we're going to slice out. We're going to get from 0 to whatever the length is, which is 20 by default, and then we're going to return that final password. All right, and whatever is returned from generate password, remember, gets put into the inner text of the result element, which is this. So if I click generate, we're going to get 20 random characters. If I change that to 5 and I click generate, okay, if I want, let's get rid of symbols and numbers, and oops, I want to click this and generate. I'm still going to get 5 characters, but they're only going to be made up of, you know, uppercase and lowercase letters. All right. Now, no matter what the length is, like I said, it's always going to be the same order of types, which is lowercase, uppercase, symbol. Actually, there's no number because I left that unchecked. If there was, then it would be number. And then, you know, lowercase, uppercase, symbol, lowercase, uppercase, symbol. So it'll be that same type order. And you can add some more code here if you want to randomize that. Maybe that can be looked at as a challenge for you. But I'm just going to leave it as that. It's always going to be something different, you know. It's just the same type order. So that's it for that part of this. The next thing we want to do is be able to click this and have it in our clipboard, so I can come down and I can, you know, I can paste it somewhere. So that's what we're going to work on next. Okay, so now we want to make this clipboard button work. So we already have our clipboard element that we brought in. I'm going to go right above our generate element event listener, and let's say clipboard element dot add event listener, and we want to listen for a click event, and then run a function. And the way we're going to do this is first create a text area. So we can use the document object and the create element method to create a text area element. And then I'm going to have a variable called password where we take whatever is in this result. Okay, this is the right here, result element. So we'll set that to result L dot, and then we want the inner text of that to be put in password. And if there's no password, so we'll say if no password, then we're just going to return. Right, so if we just click in here, it's just going to return and do nothing if there's no password. If there is, then let's take the text area dot value, and we're going to set it to whatever that password is. Then we want to take the body, and we're going to append child, meaning we're going to take the text area and put it into the body. And then we can use that text area and call a method called select. So that will just select everything in the text area. And then there's, on the document object, we have a method called exec command. And we want to pass in here copy because we want to copy whatever is selected. And then we want to remove the text area from the DOM. So let's say text area remove. And then we're just going to show an alert, and we'll say the password is copied to the clipboard. All right, so we'll save that, and let's see if this works. I'm going to generate a password. I'm going to click on this, password copied to clipboard. I'm just going to go down to my console and Command V, and there we go. So now we can copy our password. If we do like a 5 password with just numbers and symbols, if I click that, it's copied. If I go down here and I paste it in, there we go. All right, so we're now able to generate a random password based on these selections, and we can copy it to the clipboard.